Hey, everybody, this is Javi, and you are listening to the very first episode of the Inner Child Collective podcast. Welcome to the folks who are listening. I really appreciate it. I know I've been talking about this for quite some time, letting people know here and there that I was doing a podcast, and now it is here. So, um, yeah, this is it. This is it. I finally got on it. Um, I was overthinking and it was like kind of overwhelming, like what is going to happen and da da da. But now that I'm sitting down and talking to you, it doesn't feel as overwhelming. Okay, so um, Spirit definitely pushed me into like just doing it. You know what I mean? So again, welcome for listening. I really appreciate it. I actually feel a lot more comfortable because this reminds me of my radio days. So yeah, this is dope. I really enjoy it. So, but before I get started, I want to give a shout out to the following people who like trusted me with their childhood pictures for the logo. Um, so for the when I'm talking about the logo, I'm talking about the podcast logo. So, um, for one, thank you, Barbara Carter, a.k.a. Diamond Cartel, who also has a podcast here on Anchor called Pressure Makes Diamonds. So please check that out. It's really dope. She's basically talking about her experiences as a light worker and someone who is able to see spirits and taps in, and basically she taps into angel um, energy. So please check that out. You know, she has the first episode dropped not too long ago, and so I can definitely put that in the descriptions. Also, there's Nahkila Asha, my spiritual mentor. She's one of the big reasons why I'm doing this. I've been working with her for about 3 years now, or since 2016, so maybe it's about 3, maybe 4 years, if I'm doing my math correctly. And to be honest with you, she's one of the reasons why I am who I am today. So please check her out on YouTube. She has a page called Ashworth Scott Life Sculpting. You can also look under Nahkila Asha, the name itself. So please check her out. There's also my friends Lisa Ferrari and Felicia DeMaio. I really appreciate those two as well. So again, thank y'all for trusting me with your photos and believing in my vision for the podcast. I really appreciate y'all and your faith in me. Um, is very strong, and I can definitely feel that, right? So before I even, you know, go any uh, go any further with this, like I definitely want to tell y'all that this was a long time coming. This was a very much a long time coming as far as this podcast, because I've been led to work with inner child energy, and I've been interested in doing so for such a long time. And I didn't know what it would look like, this would look like, and what, you know, as far as me working with inner child energy, what would it look like? Overthinker, right? I'm very much an overthinker. And so I was basically saying, like, what is this? What am I doing? Like, what am I doing? Is in like a lot of the fear that, is about me, like giving y'all the right information and sharing that information with you. And Spirit was just basically saying, just go ahead and do it. Um, so that's what I'm doing. And I'll tell you a little bit about the format in a few minutes. But I definitely wanted to let you know a little bit about myself and why I'm doing this podcast to begin with. So, for one, I'm a psychic, intuitive medium, and author who uses divination and storytelling to help people heal from generational trauma and historical trauma. In fact, I am known as the Bowtie Psychic by my friends and followers on social media, um, whether it be Facebook, um, Instagram, or YouTube. And I've been doing tarot and oracle readings for about 20 years on and off. But I really got serious about it when I started working with Nahkila and spirit, basically working with spirit, and spirit was the one that told me to use my gifts to, connect with others. And so, and not only just connect with others, but to heal myself and to help other people use my story, you know and my experiences to help others heal, and to connect. and to become a spiritual teacher of peace and love. And so, what that means, right? It means being yourself. And also means, and when we're talking about being yourself, it means talking about all the hard shit that we go through, all the hard stuff. It's not just about love and light and peace and love. It's basically about looking at your shadows as well. Things that we're not comfortable with or talking about or looking at. We're not, you know what I mean? Um, And that means like looking at our shadow selves, our trauma, historical trauma, the negative messages we stored, in our unconscious mind, how we treat other people when we show up in the world, talk about those survival mechanisms that we use in order to survive. And that means manipulating people emotionally or otherwise. We have like we deal with that type of stuff. That's talking about the hard stuff, the shadow self that you know, we are not willing to deal with, right? And we're often told, spiritual circles not to look at that type of stuff, which is not okay. But my main focus is childhood trauma, and how that part of our lives, plays a huge part in who we are today and how we show up for other people today. Um, and when I was planning this, this podcast rather, I was wondering what the Inner Child Collective was going to be like and what it was going to look like. Because for one, I'm not the biggest fan of just talking to people and spitting information at you for an hour. I realize that, and I will die on that hill. You know what I mean? I recognize that about myself. It's one thing to talk, but it's another thing to show you. I rather show you, and I show you through my energy, right? Especially when we're doing everything by audio at this point, you know. So I've been led to give inner child energy messages and using what I receive from spirit to teach and tell stories. Basically, pull from my own experiences, pull from what I get from spirit, so on and so forth. And when I talk about stories, I'm talking about, how I break it down rather is how who we were as children, what experiences we had as children, what experiences we had as a teen, and how we're affected as an adult, and as a result of those experiences, of those trajectories that we've been through, um, in our in our life, in this lifetime. So for every week, for about 30 to 45 minutes, listeners will receive inner child messages through tarot and oracle cards. And those messages will encourage us, a lot of us, everyone in the collective who will resonate with this message, with the messages we receive, myself included, rather. Um, they will encourage us to not only connect to our inner child, and in some cases in our inner teen, because sometimes a lot of the trauma and a lot of stuff we went through happened in our teenage years, um, but to basically use that connection to face and even heal from various forms of trauma, especially sexual abuse. Okay. um, and the reason why I have it that way, and a few reasons why I'm doing this podcast, is because, for one, I'm a childhood sex abuse survivor, um, and I've had experienced other forms of abuse, but that was the main one that actually um, molded how I navigated this, how I seen people, how I show up for people, how I viewed sex, how I viewed intimacy, and how it definitely, I had a hard time, um, you know, getting close to people because of my sexual experiences, and that was basically like the foundation of how, you know, I viewed myself and other people. And so I will definitely am being called to use those experiences and use my own story to help people, um, connect to their inner child, as far as their, like, how the child views sex and how the child views abuse. But also, this is a way for me to help me um, connect to other survivors and with other survivors who are doing the same type of work that I'm doing. Um, just simply because, for one, I know I'm not alone. None of us are alone. We're very much interconnected, and two, I feel like by talking about sex abuse, it takes the power away from the stigma. It takes the power away from the golden rule of remaining silent, especially if our abuser or our perpetrator was a family member. So that is the main reason why I am doing this. Okay, the main reason, that I'm doing this podcast is basically to connect with other survivors who are also interested in doing inner child work, inner teen work. Okay, and using that to empower themselves and not put themselves in the position of being perpetual victims. You know what I mean? Um, and this is also a second reason is this is also my way of teaching that in order to heal from adult survivors, we must embrace and very much honor our inner child or inner teen. Um, we're here to acknowledge the pain and suffering that child has gone through, that teen has gone through. I mean, a lot of us are walking around playing dress up, and a lot of us are still, in the pain, not, unknowingly. Most of the time, we don't even know what the hell we're doing. Sometimes, you know, we walk around in adult meat suits. You know what I mean? In this costume, in this flesh. Um, but a lot of us are still children. We're maladjusted children, and we don't even realize that a lot of the times when we are putting ourselves in harm's way or hurting other people, that we're basically tapping into that inner child's pain and suffering, and they are doing everything they can to be heard, and it shows up in our behavior. Okay. And so as a result, we have a hard time stepping into our power as adults. We have a hard time tapping into that energy that tells us that we are more than our abuse, and we are more than, our suffering and our pain. And it's because we have not been heard as a child, and now we're making up for lost time through our behavior, and we don't even know it. So I'm using, my own experiences, and I'm using everything that I am learning, as an inner child advocate, I guess, or inner teen advocate, to basically demonstrate that we can in fact hear our inner child, and embrace our inner child, honor and reparent ourselves, without causing ourselves further harm, or causing harm to other people, especially people who are doing everything they can to be patient with us and care about us. Okay. This is also another way, this podcast rather, and the messages and the experiences. This is also my way of reaching out to the trans and gender nonconforming community. And I say this because I'm an agender transmasculine individual, and I was assigned female at birth. And a lot of my trauma happened before I transitioned. Now, when I transitioned, I recognized that okay, my old self protected me from harm. That child, that teen, that adult, my inner child was her inner child. And, you know, um, she endured a lot of abuse so I can be safe. Okay. My way of honoring my inner child, my other half, is honoring her inner child, because right now, as we speak, I'm going through second puberty. You know what I mean? So I'm pretty sure that, yes, my I will be going through those changes, and I also had to tap into my inner teen, you know, um, because her needs were met, her needs were not met, they were unmet. You know what I mean? And so this is my way of honoring a lot of what I went through, or what she went through, rather. This is my way of honoring her and thanking her for keeping me safe. You know, and so I'm pretty sure there are other people who are like other gender variants who are going through that same thing, where they are being called to tap into the inner child of who they used to be, of who protected them all these years and all these decades. They're finding ways to honor that little child, because by the end of the day, you really cannot move on and be. These are my experiences. I've experienced that. I seriously cannot move on as Javi completely until I begin the healing process of the other person I was, you know. Um, and so, or at least begin the healing process, you know, on behalf of the person I was. Basically, tap into her energy and help her heal and protect her the way I can, because she was very strong, but there was a lot that happened to her, you know. So I know there are other people who are other trans and gender nonconforming people or gender variant individuals who who are going through what I'm going through now, you know, because like I said, I'm in the middle of second puberty, and it's not a, it's a lot, it's a lot. So yeah, um, so I'm just gonna do some like housekeeping or some side notes here before I end this. Um, because of the energy that I'm using for this podcast, I won't be doing any in the amount of energy I'm going to be using. I'm not going to be doing a lot of. I won't be doing any personal readings here on the podcast. However, I will be, doing Q&As, and if people want, to have a question answered in some way, shape, or form, or want to make a comment and wanted to be read on the podcast, by all means, I'm down for that. I'm always down for any sort of question or comment that people may have, pertaining to what we're doing here. You know what I mean? So, you will have the chance to, email me, you know, any sort of question or comment you have. And I'm going to have it to where I have a bunch of other stuff too, as far as plans. And I'll talk about that later on. But just so y'all know, I won't be doing any personal readings. If people want to do a personal reading, they will have to do it outside the podcast. You can go to my website, thebowtiepsychic.com, in order to, book a personal reading. Especially if it has anything to do with the inner child, because I always give that service, and it's on there, right? So I think that's it. Yeah, I think that's it. That's the only thing I have going on as far as a side note that I have. So yeah, I just have a whole bunch of plans I want to do with the podcast. I'm definitely being led to to like set up another page for this, as far as like on social media, do like a community page, the Inner Child Collective community page, so people can actually, communicate with one another or ask questions or anything like that. I'm just getting to like set something up to where, if whenever I do get some listeners, they'll be able to like comment or whatnot, or share information with one another. Um, I'm also thinking about doing like a separate Instagram page for this as well, so it's not getting like, you know, so it's just not getting like all messed up and like lost in the sauce. You know what I mean? Because I definitely want to do strictly inner child work for Instagram. I don't know, like we'll cross that bridge when we get there. I just know that um I definitely feel like this is an opportunity for us to basically connect with one another and to talk about inner child energy, and to talk about many ways we can use that energy to heal. Because I know it's a huge thing right now as far as what people are looking for. People are looking to shed that old paradigm and to shed that whole to shed that old skin. It's 2020. 2020 is going to be coming up. I'm also going to, speaking of which, when the time comes, I'm definitely am going to do a reading um, for an inner child energy reading for the year of 2020. So I'm looking forward to doing that as well. All right. So I think that is all for me. I think that's the end of it. For this episode, rather, I'm very excited to get started with the Inner Child Collective and sharing this creation with the world and just connecting in general, doing readings and connecting with other people around the world, because podcasts are good for that. Okay, so if you have any questions or comments of any kind, either after listening to this episode or later on down the road, y'all can send them to the inner child collective podcast at gmail.com. I'll repeat that: inner child collective podcast at gmail.com. I will put that in the descriptions. In fact, I'll be doing a Q&A in an episode in the future, as I said before. So questions and comments are very much encouraged. I'm here for it. And with that being said, I pray that every message I receive from Spirit resonates with listeners, resonates with those who listen, and those who are willing or watch, those who are willing to grow from the messages that are received. Those who are ready to tap into, inner child energy, and tap into their inner child, healed from their inner child, healed and reparent themselves, using that energy. Okay, so I'll definitely see you next week. I will be doing readings I'll be doing an episode, recording an episode every Friday, and it will drop on Monday. You know, so yeah, that's it. So thank you again for listening to the Inner Child podcast, Inner Child Collective podcast. I really appreciate your energy. And until next time, peace.